Hi viewers. This is the story of a girl named Diep. A simple, innocent girl from a small town. She never wanted fame. She didn't chase money. She just wanted a peaceful life with her mother. But her life changed forever when she met a man named James. Diep lived with her mother in a small apartment. Her mother worked hard as a nurse. They didn't have much, but they had love. Diep used to help her mom every day, cooking, cleaning, taking care of things. She was kind, shy, and always thinking of others. People in her town called her an angel. But angels, sometimes, fall into the wrong hands. One morning, Diep was walking home after buying vegetables. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a fancy company in the city. You have been selected for an internship at Orion Tech. Please report tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. She was shocked. She had never even applied. Maybe it's a mistake, she whispered. But her mother smiled. Maybe it's a gift from God. So the next morning, Diep dressed in her simple clothes and took a bus to the city. She had never seen such tall buildings before. She kept looking up like a child in a dream. When she reached Orion Tech, a huge office with glass walls and guards at every gate, she felt small. But she walked in. At the front desk, a woman said, "You're Diep? Please wait. Mr. James wants to meet you." Mr. James? The CEO? Why would someone so powerful want to meet her? She was taken to the top floor. The elevator opened into a beautiful office that looked like something out of a movie. And there he was, James. He stood tall, in a black suit, holding a glass of water. His face was calm but cold. He looked at her for a few seconds. Then said, "You're not like the others. Sit." She sat, her hands shaking. "I don't usually do this," James said. "But I saw your name. And I had to meet you." "Why?" Diep asked softly. James smiled, but not a warm smile. "You'll find out." From that moment, her life started to change. The rest of the day felt like a blur to Diep. She kept replaying the moment over and over in her head, that brief, intense encounter with James. His piercing eyes, the sharp tone in his voice, the way his assistant immediately responded to his command. Who was this man? And why had he looked at her like that, as if he already knew something about her? When she got home that night, her mother noticed the change. "You okay, Diep? You look distracted," her mother said as she chopped vegetables on the kitchen counter. "I'm fine," Diep replied quickly. Too quickly. But she wasn't fine. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Even though she knew nothing about this man, something about him felt different, powerful, even dangerous. The next morning, Diep returned to the office, assuming nothing more would come of the strange encounter. Maybe he'd just mistaken her for someone else. But she was wrong. At exactly 10 a.m., the receptionist's phone rang. She answered, then turned to Diep with wide eyes. "Diep. Mr. James wants to see you. In his office." The whole room went quiet. All eyes turned to her. Some looked curious. Others looked jealous. Heart pounding, Diep stood up slowly and followed the assistant to the elevator. She had never been to the upper floors, the ones reserved for executives. The elevator doors closed behind her, and for a moment, she felt like she was being pulled into another world. When the elevator opened, everything was quiet. Polished floors. Glass walls. Expensive art. And at the very end of the hallway, a large black door. The assistant knocked twice, then opened it. "She's here, sir." James was standing behind his desk, looking out at the city skyline. He didn't turn around at first. "Come in. Sit down," he said calmly. Diep stepped inside, nerves dancing in her stomach. She sat in the chair opposite his desk, trying to keep her breathing steady. Finally, he turned to face her. "I looked into you," he said without smiling. "You're smart." Top of your class in design school. Quiet. Hardworking. No complaints. No drama. Diep blinked, unsure what to say. I have a proposal, James continued. But it comes with rules. Strict ones. She swallowed. What kind of proposal? James walked around the desk and leaned against it, arms crossed. I want you to be my assistant. Personal. Not corporate. You'd handle certain matters that require discretion. You'll be paid 5 times your current salary. But you'll need to be available at all hours. And you can't tell anyone. Not even your mother. Diep stared at him. Why me? James smirked slightly, but there was something cold in his eyes. Because you're invisible, Diep. No one notices you. That's exactly what I need. There was silence. The kind that fills the room like smoke. Dangerous. Heavy. Diep looked down at her hands. Her palms were sweating. And if I say no? James tilted his head. You won't. And he was right. 2 hours later, Diep was packing up her things. The girl who'd worked quietly in the back office was gone. She had just stepped into something much bigger. But she didn't realize it yet. This wasn't a promotion. It was the beginning of a trap. The elevator climbed like a whisper, silent but steady. Diep was officially James's personal assistant now. But nothing about this role felt official. There was no welcome lunch. No HR documents. No orientation. Just a direct transfer. And a new access card. That evening, she received a text from an unknown number. James, dinner. 9 p.m. black dress. Driver will pick you up. No explanation. No details. Just orders. She stared at her phone, wondering if she should reply. But something told her that James wasn't the kind of man who liked questions. When the car arrived, it was a black BMW with tinted windows. The driver didn't speak. Just opened the door. Diep felt like she was in a movie, or someone else's life. She wore the only black dress she owned, simple and modest. She kept her head low, nervous but curious. Where was she going? What did James want? The car stopped in front of a private rooftop restaurant, one she had only seen in magazines. As she stepped out, the valet opened the door as if she were royalty. It was surreal. James was already there. He sat at a table near the edge, city lights sparkling behind him. He wore a black suit, no tie, looking both sharp and effortless. His expression didn't change when he saw her, but his eyes moved slowly over her. You're late, he said. It's 9, Diep replied quietly. James checked his watch. 9:01. That was the moment she realized something else. James didn't just control time. He believed he owned it. The dinner was quiet. Strange. No menu. Food arrived without asking. Wine poured without offering. Everything had already been decided. Why me? She asked finally, voice barely louder than a whisper. James looked at her for a long time. You'll find out. In pieces. That answer chilled her more than any threat. After dinner, they walked to the edge of the rooftop. You ever think about jumping? James asked suddenly, staring over the railing. Diep's breath caught. What? He glanced at her, almost amused. Relax. Just a question. People up here usually think about it. It's the height. Makes your problems look smaller. Diep said nothing. Then James turned serious. His voice dropped. From this moment forward, everything you see, hear, or feel, stays between us. Do you understand? She nodded slowly. He leaned in closer. You don't just work for me now. You belong to me. Those words weren't romantic. They were cold. Possessive. She didn't respond. She couldn't. The drive home felt longer. The city looked different. Bigger. Colder. Her mother was asleep when she got home. Diep stood in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Same eyes. Same face. But something had changed. She had stepped through a door, and it had locked behind her. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Because James had secrets. And now, so did she. The days blurred together. Each one felt like the last, and each night, as Diep returned home, the tension from the rooftop dinner lingered in the air like an invisible weight. But that weight wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, a constant pressure pressing down on her chest. James's orders came in at random times, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late at night, but they always arrived with precision. Everything was calculated. Perfectly timed. She couldn't afford to slip up. One evening, she was summoned to his penthouse office. No explanation. No context. Just another cryptic message. James, meet me in the office. Don't be late. The elevator ride felt long, the silence suffocating. As she walked through the sleek, glass corridors that led to his office, she noticed how impersonal everything felt, sterile, cold. There were no personal photos. No decorations. Just glass walls, steel furniture, and dark wood. The office was designed to intimidate, and it did. James was already there, sitting behind a large desk. His eyes lifted as she entered, and once again, he looked her over, almost as if examining her. You've been doing well, he said, his voice deep and calm. But we need to step it up now. Diep's stomach churned. Step it up? What does that mean? James didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and motioned for her to follow him. She did, cautiously, as he led her toward a set of doors at the far end of the room, doors she had never seen before. Inside, the room was dark, lit only by a single overhead light. It was a storage area of sorts, but nothing in this space made sense. Filing cabinets, stacks of old documents, shelves with random items stacked haphazardly. And then, in the middle of it all, a large, wooden box, sealed shut. Diep's curiosity got the best of her. What's that? James didn't immediately answer. He simply walked over to the box, placed his hand on it, and exhaled slowly. It's time, he said, almost to himself. What is it? Diep repeated, her voice shaky. James turned to her, eyes cold and unreadable. It's your next task. Before she could respond, he opened the box, revealing its contents. The sight made her heart skip a beat. Inside the box were documents, old files, some faded and worn with age. But it wasn't just the papers that caught her attention. It was the photos. Polaroids. Grains of yellowed paper with faces she recognized from the news. People who had disappeared. People who were never found. This, James said, sliding the files out one by one, is how we do things around here. Diep's breath caught in her throat. What are you talking about? James's expression didn't change. You're going to help me find something, Diep. Or rather, someone. She stepped back, horrified. Find someone? Who? James opened another file. This one contained a photo of a man. His face was unfamiliar to her, but there was something about his eyes, something unnervingly familiar. I need you to track him down. No questions. No hesitation. If you find him, you'll be well compensated. But if you fail, he paused. Well, I won't let you fail. Diep felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't a job she could back out of. She didn't know what she was walking into, but something told her it was dangerous. Something told her that if she accepted this, there was no turning back. She glanced at the file, then back at James. I don't know who he is, she said, voice trembling. James took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. You will. Soon enough. The way he said it made her skin crawl. His tone softened. "I've given you a chance, Diep. Don't disappoint me." Before she could respond, he handed her the file. "You'll report to me every day with updates. Fail to do so, and you won't be welcome here anymore. Understand?" She nodded slowly, despite the sick feeling in her stomach. Understood. But as she left the room, clutching the file in her hands, her mind raced. This wasn't a task. This wasn't a job. This was a test. A test of loyalty. A test of obedience. And in that moment, Diep realized something. She was no longer just a player in James's world. She was part of the game. The weight of the file was unbearable. As Diep walked through the cold, dimly lit corridors of the penthouse, the pages inside seemed to grow heavier with every step she took. Her thoughts churned like a storm inside her head. James's words echoed relentlessly in her mind, "You're part of the game now." What game? What was he asking of her? The world she had entered felt like an abyss, dark and endless. Each move she made, every step she took, only seemed to pull her deeper into its depths. The file in her hands felt like a ticking time bomb, its contents heavy with consequences. She knew, deep down, that if she didn't comply, if she hesitated even for a moment, there would be no turning back. She needed answers. The elevator ride back to her apartment felt like an eternity. As the doors opened and she stepped into the lobby, the ordinary world around her seemed strangely alien, as if she were living in a different reality altogether. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the sound of people's voices, the soft clink of coins in a vending machine, all of it felt distant, foreign. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "James, report to my office first thing tomorrow morning. I'll have more instructions for you." Her stomach twisted. She had known this was coming, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she could face it. She thought about calling her mother, asking her for advice, but the thought of involving her only made the situation more complicated. Diep had never been one to involve others in her problems. It was part of the reason she felt isolated. But in this moment, that isolation felt like a curse. Her apartment door opened with a quiet click. She stepped inside, dropped the file on the coffee table, and collapsed onto the couch. The city lights from her window cast an eerie glow across the room, illuminating the cold, sterile space. She had lived here for years, but now, everything felt like a facade, a temporary stop before the storm. She stared at the file again, the photos inside now haunting her. The face of the man she was supposed to find burned into her memory. He was someone important, someone who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The photo was old, grainy, but she could see the fear in his eyes. He knew something. He had information. He was a piece of the puzzle. But whose puzzle? Diep felt trapped, cornered by James's manipulation. She had seen the ruthless, calculating side of him before, but this was different. This wasn't a business deal, this was personal. He wanted her to track down a man who had knowledge that could expose something far larger than either of them understood. She didn't know where to start. She didn't know who this man was, why he was so important, or what he could reveal if found. But she knew one thing. Finding him was the key to her survival in James's world. If she failed, if she didn't succeed at whatever task this was, she would be discarded. She couldn't afford to fail. The next morning, she arrived at James's office early, her mind still racing with unanswered questions. She had barely slept the night before, and now, every muscle in her body felt tense, like a coiled spring ready to snap. The penthouse loomed before her like a fortress, the glass windows reflecting the morning sunlight in a way that made it seem impenetrable. As the elevator ascended, Diep's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't escape the feeling that she was about to walk into a trap, but there was no going back. She had crossed a line the night before, and now, she was committed. The doors opened with a soft ding, and she stepped into the cold, sterile office space once more. James was sitting at his desk, reviewing something on his laptop. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. Without saying a word, he gestured for her to sit. "You've had time to think," he said, his voice calm, yet there was a sharpness to it. "And now, you'll begin your task." Diep's breath caught in her throat. "I've already been thinking about it," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I don't know where to begin." James's lips curled into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. "That's the first test, Diep. You won't get all the answers at once. You need to start on your own. You have the tools. Use them." He slid a folder across the desk. It was a different folder this time, thicker, filled with more information. Diep opened it slowly, her fingers trembling slightly as she scanned the documents inside. The man she was supposed to find was named Daniel Westbrook. He had been a journalist, investigative, someone who had uncovered corruption at the highest levels. But then, he had disappeared. No one knew where he was, or even if he was still alive. The photo she had seen the night before was just a glimpse of who he used to be. But this was no ordinary journalist. Westbrook had been digging into something dangerous. Something that could unravel the entire network James was part of. "You're looking for a needle in a haystack," James said, his voice cold. "But that's your job now. And if you do it well, you'll be rewarded." Rewarded. Diep had heard that word before, but it never felt real. She didn't know if she wanted his reward. All she wanted now was freedom from this twisted game, but she had to play by the rules. "I'll find him," Diep said, her voice firm, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. James leaned back in his chair, observing her closely. "I hope so. Because if you don't, I'll make sure you regret it." With those words, he dismissed her. The cold, impersonal nature of his office was suffocating. She couldn't get out of there fast enough. The search began in earnest. Days blurred together as Diep pored over the files, searched through countless databases, and pieced together the fragments of Westbrook's life. It wasn't long before she uncovered more secrets. Connections between Westbrook's investigation and powerful figures in the media, the government, and even corporate leaders. His work had been more than just exposing corruption, it was about exposing a network, a hidden power structure that controlled everything from the press to the stock market. Each discovery only made the task more dangerous. But with each step closer to finding him, Diep felt the weight of James's words, "If you fail, you won't be welcome here anymore," pressing down on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to disappoint him, not now, not when she was this close. The breakthrough came one night, when she uncovered a series of encrypted messages between Westbrook and a former whistleblower. The whistleblower's identity was unknown, but the messages were clear. Westbrook had been onto something big, something that, if exposed, could bring down powerful people. Diep's heart raced as she traced the messages back to a hidden location. It wasn't a person she was looking for. It was information. The key to everything. But finding it wouldn't be easy. And then it hit her, this wasn't just a search for a missing man. It was a race against time. Against forces more powerful than she could even begin to comprehend. James had been using her from the very beginning, pulling her into a web of manipulation and deceit. As she prepared for the final step in her search, Diep realized the truth. The real game wasn't finding Daniel Westbrook. The real game was uncovering the darkness behind everything James had been hiding. And now, Diep was in deeper than ever before. But what was waiting for her at the end of this path? What truths would she uncover? And more importantly, would she ever be able to escape the game she had been trapped in? Only time would tell. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Have thoughts or theories? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear what you think. And if you think someone else needs to see this, share it with them. Let's keep the conversation going and uncover even more stories together.